Welcome back to part 2 of Learning Module 6. We're going to be talking about basic strength tests, and we're looking at pre-testing guidelines and the ACSM protocols. Now, postural testing, range of motion testing, and strength testing, all of these go hand in hand. The postural analysis should be performed first, followed by any kind of movement / range of motion testing, then you test for strength. If there's any discrepancy that identified in the range of motion testing and in the posture, it will be identified in the strength testing movements. So if we look at from left to right here, we looked at the 4 types of postural alignments. You do lateral views, you do anterior views, and you do posterior views. Then you do some range of motion at each and every joint you can test. Then you do the strength testing. The Kendall book, Muscles, Testing and Function with Posture and Pain, that is one of the books that I use, and I think it's a fabulous book, and it really gets down to each and every individual joint, because if you look at each and every joint to see what its range of motion is, then you can test individual systems in there. When you do the basic strength testing, like on the right hand side, a person doing a deadlift, that's Franco Colombo. He's a well-known power lifter and bodybuilder from the late 70s and 80s. And you can get an idea of just where this person is at. Then you can identify where the strength deficits are. Now remember, strength could be multiple categories, including flexibility or range of motion. Now let's look at pre-testing considerations. You must follow standardized testing protocols. In other words, if you're doing any kind of testing, especially in exercise testing, if you're looking at a specific movement pattern, they must have strict posture. You must adhere to a specific speed of contraction, and everything has to go through a full range of motion. Now, if you look back to the previous slide, any range of motion deficit will be detected in one or all of the strength movements. Familiarization. At least one practice session. You know, the book says that, but this is really questionable for some movements. And at least a warm-up, you should have 5 to 10 minutes of a light aerobic or dynamic stretching according to the manual. But, you know, you can use your own protocols. Just make sure they're ready to do any kind of strength testing. Some more familiarization. This is a highly controversial area of concern. The textbook says at least one practice session before you utilize any test. However, the areas of concern for the tester, how the actual movement is performed. That is, does the tester, you guys, have any experience in actually performing this particular movement? Has the tester learned the do-I principles? This is actually from a biomechanics book by McGinnis. It's called the do-I principles. You have to describe the movement. In other words, you have to demonstrate it and describe it. Then you have to observe them doing it. You do the evaluation, and then you instruct them how to do the movement properly. Now, once you do this, then you can pick up any kind of discrepancies they may have based on their previous evaluations about not any areas of concern or the strength deficits while they're performing this movement. Next, what is the level of the person being tested using a particular movement pattern? Do they have an adequate foundation of strength? Have they ever even exercised before? Do they have any kind of familiarization with this kind of testing movement? So you really have to take all these into consideration. Now, more suggestion, you should always have a significant amount of time teaching basic movements before attempting to test any type of strength. Now, let's go back. If you do a postural analysis, range of motion, then you do some individual system testing of the muscles, you can get an idea. But actual real strength testing, my protocol is to not do it until they've actually learned that movement with considerable time and learning how to do it, optimize the efficiency to maximize the effectiveness of that particular exercise. And then, if you've done it for a while, it also gives time for connective tissue adaptation. The type of tests that are controversial and considered potentially dangerous for novices are 1 rep maximum. And that's for any movement. I don't care what it is. Novices should never really do any kind of 1 rep maximum test, even though they say, they say it's not particularly dangerous. You should never also do maximum testing on highly skilled movements. Like a lot of you out there may do some crossfitting stuff, and they do a lot of Olympic lifting and highly skilled movements for a lot of repetitions. However, these should never be done until you've actually learned this movement very efficiently based on your motor learning habits and patterns, and you've developed a considerable foundation of strength. Also, too, explosive movements like jumping, sprinting, agility, etc. Anything in that category should be practiced for a considerable amount of time first, and develop a standard protocol of foundational strength should be done first. So these are my suggestions. Also, too, specificity, muscle or muscle groups. You can't really isolate a muscle, but you can get an idea of the system that you're working on. You also have to look at speedy contraction and have to look at the joint angle. Is the joint going through its entire range of motion? Also, too, for safety. This goes back to the motor learning for every exercise and learning the proper technique. Then you have to look at the interpretation of the results. Those health criteria or population-specific norms are, can you look at the percentage of improvement in absolute or relative terms? Now, the types of muscular strength testing we have isometric or static. That's measured at one specific point. So an example would be doing range of motion and like a bicep curl. You can look at what are your strengths, your levels of strength at specific points through that whole range of motion. You're looking at peak forces obtained throughout each particular point in there, and then you're looking for maximum voluntary contraction. That's your peak force. This is seldom done in field testing because it's very time consuming and geared towards specific force production at a certain point in a specific movement. So it's, like I said, it's very specific. If you look like doing a bench press, a lot of people will get about halfway off their chest and then stick, but you can measure that specific force production at that particular sticking point to see, okay, is this where my deficit is, my strength deficit at that point could be. So a lot of powerlifters will do this, and they'll train from that point on and train to specific range of motion. Now, isokinetic, they're measuring peak rotational force. It's force, and the speed is controlled. But using the machines down here are extremely expensive. Now, the dynamic types of strength testing, these are the standard protocol for most field tests. You have movement of body or some kind of external load. You have lower repetitions to measure maximum or absolute strength, and you use the higher repetitions to measure strength endurance or endurance strength. Now, repetition maximum testing. The 1 RM, or 1 repetition maximum, is the heaviest weight lifted once using good form. This is considered the gold standard, but once again, it's very dependent on the goals, the environment you're working in, and the level of training for that particular person. Now, you should be able to obtain your 1 rep maximum at least 3 to 5 attempts. The textbook states 1 rep max or near 1 rep maximum is safe for most adults, including those with known or latent CAD or other risk factors. That's cardiovascular diseases. So if you look at that, this is very controversial and very potentially dangerous. So you need to really weigh this with a real caution to see, is this really necessary for this particular person? So caution in older adults with increased cardiac risk, those who are pregnant, any of those with orthopedic concerns, and any kind of novice or beginner. You need to really evaluate what kind of testing do you really need to do with them. Now, 1 rep maximum, repetition maximum testing, caution must be taken with both types of testing. Precautions never, 1 rep maximum test is never utilized with beginners or novices. Immediate or advanced trainees and trainers must be evaluated before 1 rep maximum testing is done. A familiarization with teaching the proper technique in any exercise movement must be utilized in both types, whether it's 1 rep or repetition maximum. And the trainer has to know the do-I principles: describe, observe, evaluate, and instruct. Then you can teach the person you're trying to train or coach, you can teach them how to do it most efficiently and effectively. Now, the 1 rep maximum testing is only utilized after completing 1 or more training phases for developing neuromuscular efficiency, and that is correct movement patterns and optimizing their technique. They get some kind of connective tissue adaptation in the bones, ligaments, and tendons. And a particular phase of training will vary substantially with training experience at level of trainee. In other words, some people will adapt rather quickly over a small period of time. Then you can do some testing. Others take a lot longer. So you really have to evaluate each person on an individual basis. Now for repetition maximum, 8 to 12 is normally what they consider the repetition maximum. Heavy weight lifted 8 to 12 times is in good form. Now, once again, this is not for high skilled movements. I must really emphasize that. It's not for high skilled movements. It's useful in stable chronic conditions for like hypertension and diabetes that are well controlled. Like their conditions are well controlled. So you have to pick a relatively decent weight so they can use 8 to 12 times. So it gives you an idea and an evaluation or an estimate of what their 1 rep maximum test might be. And this minimizes error in establishing training loads as compared to a 1 rep maximum. Normally, the ACSM says a 10 rep max is equal to about 75% of your 1 rep maximum. So you can convert the 10 rep max to a 1 rep max and then the strength ratios. Divide the weight load by 0.75 to find estimated 1 rep max. And then you can divide estimated 1 rep max by the subject weight to get the strength to weight ratio. This is more applicable to novices, beginners once they have learned proper techniques. You must learn proper techniques, then do the repetition maximum testing can follow. Get that? Let's say that again. You have to learn proper technique before you do the repetition maximum of any kind. Now, the body weight exercises, this is very useful to determine levels of overall strength in almost any individual. One of the things these body weight exercises are good for, you can look at their flexibility strength and basic movement patterns. Normal human movements like squatting up and down, lunging, stepping, pushing, pulling movements. Those are real basic human movements that you can actually test. Now, the balance and ability to control the individual body weight during basic human movement patterns is essential. What we see a lot in this particular field that people just want to jump right into a program and trainers just put them on some kind of machine or teach them how to do a movement. You really need to see, can they even control their own body weight first before you start loading it up? Now, the ability to move one's own body weight can sometimes be more useful to determine various categories of strength, and can be performed almost anywhere and is extremely inexpensive. This is applicable for both novices and beginners, as well as experienced trainees as well. Again, these are all done once they learn proper movement patterns. Now, some examples of body weight training exercises. You can normal body weight squat, both feet body weight squat, a one-legged squat. You could use pistols. That means with one leg extended out, and you squat down with the leg sticking out. Or you can put your one foot up on a bench and turn around and face the other way and just do a single leg squat. You can do lunges. You can do stationary or walking types of lunges. You can do push-ups. I've used this before. You can use two-handed versus one hand to see if there's any kind of bilateral deficit between each hand. You can go close grip, wide grip. You can do with the feet inclined. Think of all the various possibilities to test strength at all different levels and all different positions. You can do pull-ups, overhanded, underhanded, wide, narrow grip. You can do dips. You can do them on a regular dip apparatus. You can use them between two benches. And you could use them almost anywhere, between two chairs, just as long as they're able to control that movement pattern. You can also look at stiff back extensions, where you can test their glutes and hamstring strength as well as their low back strength if you have the proper apparatus. Handstand push-ups. Now, a lot of CrossFitters do this, but it gives you a great idea. Can they control their body weight, and do they have enough strength to actually push their entire body weight in a reverse position? This is very advanced because this tests upper body pushing in a frontal or sagittal plane, similar to an overhead pressing motion. Now, testing the core, any kind of abdominal crunches, partial crunches. You can do leg raises, leg lowering, hanging leg raises like toes to bar, knees to elbow. You can do planking, front, side. Then you can do bridging as well with feet on the floor, and you can raise one leg at a time. Think of all the possibilities there just to get an idea. Can people activate their core and hold it there for static and dynamic strength testing? Now, normative data for muscular fitness. Generally, these norms have been derived from a fairly narrow subset of the population. Now, you have to make sure that the norms you use are derived from the tests that use the same type of equipment. And also, too, please note that many of the tests used now have no database to compare the test results to. So even if you don't have norms to follow, what you can do if you're testing in a particular movement pattern, you can test somebody, find out how they're doing a particular test, and then use that for pre and post testing or for continuous testing all the way down the line in their entire program. Once again, you can make up your own, but just as long as you keep records to see, am I changing? Am I getting better at this particular movement? This is what we call pre and post training comparison. Frequency of comparison should be taken into consideration based on quality and quantity of training, the client's desire for information, and the staff availability. This includes percentage of improvement of strength or endurance. Now, what are some causes of fitness testing errors? The subject, do they have the proper motivation? Or are they in a fatigue state? Their body weight variations other than body composition from test to retest. Now look, because if they're training, they might be losing some weight, so their protocols and their movement patterns and technique might change drastically. Also, varied hydration and type of foods ingested, different times of the day, or altered diet. Now think about that. So if you want standardized data, your testing should be at the same time of the day and maybe day of the week from your previous test. That's called standardization. And the exercising or physical activity before the test could affect your subject as well. Now for the technician, once again, experience with technique training, and do you have the proper education and biomechanics, especially forces, where they're going, and vector analysis, everything, joint structure, structure and function of the human body, all that, because you have to describe it, observe it, evaluate it, and then instruct it. And there's a huge lack of standardization from technicians, or these people observing and giving these tests. They also, too, from a technician's point of view, you must give encouragement given to each subject. Some people do, some people don't. And also, too, you get a lot of tester bias, because they say, oh, yeah, that looks good. Okay, others are real strict. So if you're going to do any kind of testing, make sure if somebody does pre and post testing or continuous testing, make sure the same tester does the test over and over again. The equipment, it should be calibrated, appropriate to fit each subject, and the type of equipment or lack of specific types for the equipment. As far as the environment, the room temperature, either indoor or outdoor, should be the same. The weather should be the same, time of day, and any kind of distractions. These are all causes of fitness testing error. Now, we're going to overview. The ACSM test will be reviewed first. Then we're going to have suggested tests for overall strength evaluation of the client will follow. All these are not in the book, the ones that I'm going to give you beyond what the book says. They're from numerous additional sources. Then we're also going to talk about testing older adults, then testing those with diseases. Now let's look at a muscular endurance test for field test. Basically, it's a standard push-up. Standard positions, and they are norms developed from the men. Modified positions, norms were developed from the women. And either position can be used, however, by either sex. So we'll look at that, because sometimes, people can't do regular push-ups, with their knees off the ground, so they might have to go to the knees instead of the feet. We're also going to look at the abdominal curl. And these are not to be used during pregnancy, during the first trimester, or those with chronic low back pain. Now, if you look at the push-up and the abdominal curl, the two little stars there, These tests are not adequate for assessing muscular endurance if a minimum of 15 repetitions cannot be completed. Please take that into consideration. Now for the push-up, here's the standard. You start in the up position and go down. Chin usually hits the ground, but I have a problem with this picture because if you look at this gentleman's hands and if you look at the down position, he's actually in that particular position. That's almost like doing a tricep press because his arms out to the sides. If you're going to do this, the elbow should be over top of the hands. Therefore, the chest is going to be tested more. However, you might have a close grip where the hands should be close to the body, but they should be back a little bit more to test shoulders, chest, and arms. For the females, this is what we're talking about. On the knees, coming down. Now, if you look at her down position, her elbows are pretty much over top of her wrist and everything too, but the hands are close in together. So it's mostly testing her shoulders and her tricep because it's like doing a close grip bench press. So once again, hands are out or hands are in, depending on what you want to do. But you need to be consistent between the pre and the post test. Now here are the fitness categories by age and gender for push-up tests using numbers completed from various age ranges from excellent to needs improvement. For the abdominal curl, you're laying flat on the ground, hands are at your side, and you have a mark that the knees are bent at about a 90-degree angle, and how you would move, you would slide your hands up in a curl position to where the marker is on there, and that's just beyond the knees. So basically, you're doing about a 30-degree flexion because you don't want to come up because then you start testing the hip flexion. You're trying to test the rectus abdominis to see are they strong enough, and you would be surprised that many people cannot do this test. And here's the abdominal curl numbers, the fitness categories from ages and fitness from excellent to needs improvement. Now the muscular endurance, the YMCA bench press, it uses a fixed load which differs according to sex. Men use 80 pounds on the bar, women use 35 pounds on the bar. Now for some fixed loads, they may be too heavy for older or deconditioned clients to lift repetitively. Now, you may look at that and think, this may not be very much, but a lot of people don't have a lot of upper body strength. The fixed load may also be too light for some fit people. The reps completed may not be signaling more than typical for training. So once again, you get an idea of where this person's at. For use for those who have experience lifting free weights. And a note here, we're going to be going over bench press technique and all techniques of basic exercises in AA 115. So here are your bench press norms for ages and your levels of fitness for men and women. Now, we're going to stop here and then we're going to go into part 3. Welcome to Learning Module 6. We're going to talk about assessment of muscular fitness this week. Now this is going to be a little different than what most of you might have experienced in the past. So, like I said, this one, the book is based on the ACSM guidelines. However, we're going to add a few other additional items in here to give you a better clarification of exactly what we need to look at when we're in this particular field. Now, in this particular course, as just previously said, the textbook is based on the ACSM guidelines. But again, additional information has been added for further clarification. So we're going to divide this whole presentation into 3 distinct parts. The first is going to be the introduction and talk about the concepts related to this particular, these guidelines. The next is going to be pre-testing guidelines and the ACSM muscular fitness test. And the last section is going to be the additional or suggested test that we think you should utilize and think about when you're assessing someone about their muscular fitness. Now, let's look at the concepts and purpose. The basic concept is just the breakdown of muscular fitness. This is the general concept. We're going to look at muscular strength and muscular endurance. And the goals of testing, we're trying to establish weaknesses in certain muscles in a particular system of the body. Then we're going to identify these imbalances in muscular strength and endurance. We're not only going to test just muscular endurance, but we need to find out how strong a certain muscle is, and it's from all sides of the system. Anterior, posterior, lateral, medial. We're looking at everything on all the parts around the joint to see if there is a definite strength deficit. And that's maximum strength and strength endurance. And these data are going to help us design training programs, or just a program, to eliminate any weakness or weaknesses. Then it's going to enable us to track our progress to see, is our program doing what it's supposed to be doing. Now, the true concept. Let's look at muscular fitness. It refers to the integration between basic muscular strength and basic muscular endurance. And we're also going to look at multiple categories of strength. And the general fitness public doesn't really have a good understanding of all the categories of strength. And that's what we're going to look at as well, too. We're going to break them down and review them. Now, we must analyze and review key terms before determining what muscular strength is. We're going to look at what is health, what is fitness, and what the real definite strength is, and look at strength's various categories. Now, let's look at the integration flow chart. Basically, we're looking at health. What is health? Well, basically, it's the absence of disease. For us, we're looking at nutrition and physical activity. We talked about nutrition already, and we looked at how complicated that can be depending on the individual and what they really need. Now we're going to look at the other aspects on the physical activity side. Now, what is physical activity? All physical activity is any activity that uses large muscle group to expend energy. Now, the next going down one, it's exercise. And what is exercise? We all have our own interpretation and idea what exercise is, but all exercise is planned physical activity. Because if we look at physical activity, it could be many different things. But if we plan it correctly, we can develop a program that's going to be suited just for us and what our goals are. Then within exercise, the next step is fitness. And everybody has their own idea of what fitness is. But our definition is going to be the ability to perform any activity with vigor and energy. Now, remember that word, the ability to perform. And fitness is broken down into 3 distinct categories. On the left-hand side is health-related fitness. On the right side is skill-related fitness. Those two combined together looks like sports-related fitness, but it also has to do with people in activities of daily living. But what is missing in here, what a lot of people don't focus on, is the physiological-related fitness. That's the one category in the middle. Take all this and go over to the big arrow pointing up, we look at this performance training pyramid. Because remember, any activity is considered a performance, whether it's sports or activities of daily living. That's why we've developed this performance training pyramid. Now, this is not a new concept. The former Soviet Union, the Russians, actually developed this. A lot of the Eastern Bloc countries use this. So if you look at the pyramid, what's at the base? It's the foundation. That's GPP, or General Physical Preparation. If we look at preparation, most times our physical preparation is very unstable. So we need to stabilize it more by working on starting a program, building a foundation of whatever exercises we're going to use, building a foundation of good technique in any exercises we do. And with that, once we build a good foundation of technique in any exercise, we can then increase its volume of training as well as the load, and that helps to increase our work capacity. So technique training and work capacity will help us stabilize our physical preparation. Now, once we build this foundation, we can go to the next step, and that's special physical prep. In other words, once we build the foundation, then we can become more specialized, which leads us to the top, trying to reach a peak or reach our goal, and that's optimizing our physical preparedness. And that's what we're going to look at to reach our peak and reach our goals. So that's our integration flow chart. So please keep this in mind. Now, what is health? The basic definition is absence of disease. And there are 2 types. We have our positive health, And that's the capacity to enjoy life and withstand any challenges that are thrown at us. The negative side is it's associated with morbidity, which is the incident of disease, and premature mortality, which is death. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be as healthy as possible so we can enjoy life and not get any disease. But if we do get them, we can fight them off with a number of different protocols to help us withstand those. Now, what's a more inclusive definition of strength? We're going to define it as a human condition possessing the following dimensions. If we look here, we have a hexagon, so we have 6 different parts we're going to look at. So we spend most of our, from early childhood all the way through adulthood, developing an education. We go to school and we learn as much as we can, about how our world operates, business, science, all kinds of things. And most of this is to develop a good occupation. So we do all this education to find that job that we like. We want to do something for the rest of our lives that we really like to do. And within that aspects, we learn how to socialize between school and our work. We learn how to socialize effectively. We find people that we have lots in common with, we get along with. We also have to deal with people we don't like, because we all need to get along, as they say, to be able to work in that particular, in a world environment or whatever environment you are in. Now, if you develop good educational skills, good occupational skills, and good social skills, that leads to good psychological wellness or health. Because when we feel good about ourselves from all these different things, we become very confident in our ability to be able to cope with whatever's thrown at us from an educational point of view, occupation, and social. Now, on the other aspect of wellness or health is the spiritual. Most of us believe in something, whether it's a higher power or we don't believe in a higher power. It's up to us. But we all believe in something, and even not believing in something means that we believe in that. So that's a very, very personal aspect of health and wellness. But, like I said, that's the individual. But it does play a big part in how we deal with a number of different things. And the last one is our physical health. Because we all know from all the data out there, all the on the web and everything too, we've learned so much. Everything's right at our fingertips that we need to exercise. We need to lead a healthy lifestyle. We need to eat right, get rid of stress, all those things to have a good physical health. But if we look at all this, let's look at the whole big picture. Once we reach adulthood, out of school and we find a job, we spend much of our time in our occupation because we need to have a good career to make enough money, to have a family if we want one, to have a good place to live, to have those possessions that we want in our life and all that. And that also, with a good occupation, we spend most of our time there. We have to socialize, be psychologically fit, along with our beliefs, so all combined together. But however, a lot of times, this leaves us little time for physical health. And that's one of the biggest things that is neglected in our society. Now let's look at 3 major categories of risk factors. We have to go back and look at the hexagon. On the left side, we have an inherited or biological aspects or categories. We are getting older. As we get older, that we know we're more susceptible to certain types of diseases or conditions. Now, gender-wise, males versus females, we all have different conditions that both sides deal with. Race is another thing because between races we have different conditions or diseases that are more prone to specific races. Then susceptibility to disease, that's our genetics. Let's take an example would be arthritis. Some people are more susceptible to arthritis than others. So we have to really go back and look at our family history and go back and look at our past to see what we might be prone to and take a good look at that. The next is environmental. From a physical aspect, what is our environment like? Dirty air, dirty water, noise pollution, unsafe highways. What environment in there? Is it safe or is it unsafe to be in that environment? From a socioeconomic point of view, what is our income like? Do we have a high income? Do we have a low income? Because the more money we make, we really believe the more money we make, the more happy we'll be. A lot of people think money isn't the answer to everything, but it sure the heck helps, which is probably from a realistic point of view is true. Because if you have more income, it will dictate the type of housing we can have. It also dictates from our educational point of view what type of employment we're going to get or what career choices that we pick. A lot of people will get a education in a job that they really don't want to do, but it provides a lot of income and provides a lifestyle that they really want. And that's from a status point of view. So you can see that's a socioeconomic. From a family point of view, some people want to get married, they want to have children. They may come from a very loving household. They may come from a very divided household, which from abusive to neglect, all kinds of stuff. We also have to deal with the high rate of divorce in this country. More than 50% of those who marry will end up in divorce. And that causes a substantial amount of stress, which could really affect many aspects of our health. How about the death of a loved one? That has a major impact on our health and our psychological aspect, which is part of health. A lot of people, when they get stressed out, they lose a loved one, or children leaving, which is one of the other ones, or divorce. One of the behaviors that they might do, they might drink a lot or smoke, or they might just have behavior that's not conducive to good health, which leads us to the next category, which is behavioral. Smoking. We know smoking is one of the worst things we could do. It has 400 known carcinogens in it. So bad. I'll say bad dog, bad dog, bad dog. Please don't smoke. It's one of the worst things we could do. In our society, too, we just talked about this from the hexagon. Inactivity and poor nutrition really can affect our overall health. Drinking alcohol is a behavior because some people can handle a lot of alcohol and just walk away. Other people are more prone to addiction, and that goes over to the susceptibility to diseases. That it could be a genetic trait. Look at your family history. That could be a part of it too. Overuse of medication. A lot of people just want to check out. Alcohol could be considered a drug. It is considered a drug. So overuse of certain types of medication for pain and all that, or just to deal with certain conditions, could really affect our behavior. Fast driving. People that are really, really reckless. We get, we're people that are young. We get the fast cars. We don't care about anybody else. They don't wear their seatbelts. They like to live on that edge, which could be a problem and affect our health. And there's always that huge pressure to succeed. And that causes a substantial amount of stress. So we're always, trying to crush the other guy, to make it better, to move ahead, to fight off those people because you want to be successful. And that can cause a lot of problems as well. But our focus is going to be on increasing activity and optimizing nutrition. So let's look at physical activity and health. Physical activity and health. The impact of regular physical activity on health improves cardiorespiratory health. That means if you have a strong, healthy heart, if you can increase the size of the chambers of the heart and increase the thickness of the walls of the heart, we can pump out more blood per beat, take that oxygen-carrying blood, the red blood cells, take that oxygen to all the tissues of the body and make it healthier. Because in that way, if our heart can pump more blood per beat, our heart doesn't have to work as much over a lifetime. It can improve our metabolic health, our ability to metabolize the foods and all that, to work optimally in all the systems of the body. We have improved musculoskeletal health. We're going to look at that in a little bit too, about how strength is vitally important to becoming a healthy human, because strength is the foundation of a lot of things that we do. We also have certain reductions in certain types of cancer. We have improved mental health, which we looked at too from the hexagon, because if we're a healthy person and we're vivacious and we have a good job and social life is good, it improves our psychological aspects because we become confident and we're able to handle the stresses that are thrown at us. It will also improve our functional ability and overall reduction in falls as we get over. That means being stronger, which we just alluded to. Now our focus is going to be on improved musculoskeletal health here. So what is physical activity? Once again, as we just briefly stated before in our diagrams, that it's any movement of the body produced by skeletal muscles resulting in energy expenditure. And this isn't just exercising or sports, it's also in activities of daily living. That's why we always tell people to be as physically active as you can. Next, what is energy? Well, energy is nothing more than a capacity to do work. There are 6 basic forms. We have solar energy, which is our sun. We have light energy, heat energy, chemical energy, mechanical energy, and this is from human movement. This is the most mechanically efficient machine ever designed. We have a foundation that's our skeleton. That's held together, has joints, has an axial, appendicular skeleton. It's put together, held together by joints and ligaments to cause human movement. And if you look in that movement as well too, we have this foundation. It's kind of like the frame of a car. Now, the engine of that car is the muscular system. But the only thing that's going to make that muscular system work is the electrical system, which is our nervous system. But even in a car, what else do we need? We need chemical reaction, which means we need some kind of fuel, which is food. So we're going to talk about nutrition and how that food is broken down in our bodies, which is physiology, structure, and function. Now let's look at some subcategories of physical activity. It's self-care or some kind of daily task. What do we do to take care of ourselves, and what do we do on a day-to-day basis? What is our occupation or leisure time activities? What do we like to do recreationally when we're not working? Then there's always the structured activity, which is exercise or some kind of competitive sport in our leisure time. So this should look familiar to you. This is what exercise is. So let's look at it a little bit further. Now, what is exercise? Exercise, as we previously stated in our integration flow chart, is nothing more than planned physical activity. It's a subset of physical activity that is planned, structured, and repetitive, and has the objective of improving or maintaining our physical activity. Now we need to note here too, there's a lot of organizations out there that consider planned exercise to be non-productive since life events are more or less unplanned. But this is true to a point, but not really true. You know, it's like a business plan at a business. What do they do every year at the beginning of the year? They look at where they're at and where they want to go. They set goals, so they make a business plan. Each department has their own plan. They all integrate together, and each month is a specific plan throughout each year to reach their goal. And what do they do every quarter? They review it. They have a quarterly review to see, is our plan working? And exercise planning, making that plan, what a lot of people call periodization, program design, is the same exact thing. You're making a big plan over a period of time. You write it out, and then you evaluate it as you go along to see, is this program working to what I need to do to reach my goal? Now, what is fitness? Fitness is the ability to perform, there's that word again, perform any or all activities with adequate vigor and energy. And remember, energy is the capacity to do work. Now, the key words here are energy and perform, i.e., life is one big performance. So the expanded definition of fitness, these are the essential factors. This is the interrelation between structure and function. These are called the X factor, S factors. We need a certain amount of strength to be able to carry out these duties in everyday life. We need a certain amount of speed. We can either move slow or fast, but we need that. We need a certain amount of stamina. If we're working or we're performing some kind of activity, we need to be strong enough to be able to do this movement time after time after time, and that helps increase our work capacity or strength endurance or endurance strength. We also need a certain amount of suppleness. We have to make sure the joints move through their optimal ranges of motion so we can perform efficient and effective movements while decreasing the risk of injury. And that leads to the next one. That's skill, which is neuromuscular efficiency. That's the style of expression of a skill. Like a good example is running or walking or even squatting up and down. Well, like I said, we all have the same basic parts, but it depends on how we're built. We're going to optimize a style of technique for that particular exercise So we optimize our efficiency to maximize the effectiveness of that particular movement pattern. And that leads us again to the structure. That's the somatotype. There's 3 different types of somatotypes, which we'll get into later, but it's the size and shape of the human body and how it's put together. Each of us are built differently. So, however we're put together, if we're going to do a certain movement pattern, we need to optimize our style of technique for any exercise based on our structure and our levels of strength. So that's what we have to look at too. We'll get into that later. The next and the last one is spirit, our psychological aspects. We've all seen people that are very dedicated to working out, and they're always positive, and they have a positive outlook. They're focused, they're confident. But what about those people that aren't? You see the people that don't want to go to the gym. They don't have a tolerance for any kind of exercise or pain or discomfort. They don't like to do that. So we see all these different types. But if we're in a really good condition, have great levels of fitness, it will increase our psychological or our spirit. Now let's identify the components of fitness. There's three separate categories: health-related fitness, skill-related fitness, and physiological-related fitness. What makes them different and what makes them all important? Because if we look over at the chart, we'll see that fitness is a part of exercise, and fitness have the ability to perform any activity with vigor and energy. So we have to look at these 3 components, these 3 categories of fitness. Now, health-related fitness is normally associated with decreasing hypokinetic disease. We're going to look at that next. It used to be 5 categories, but Neiman in 2003 broke it down into 3 basic categories. The first one is strength. And we're going to look at another chart in a little bit, but strength has to do with flexibility. And that's flexibility, strength to be able for the joint to go through its full range of motion, either static or dynamic. We also need maximum amounts of strength to be able to increase our work capacity, like endurance. But we need to be able to be strong enough to be able to do those things we're challenged with. We also need cardiovascular fitness. That is the strength of our cardiorespiratory and cardiovascular systems, so we carry enough oxygen to our muscles and all our vital organs to make sure that we're optimizing all those things we put into it. Ensure that these organs and systems are working optimally. The last one is body composition. A lot of people think, hey, they just want to get their body fat down from an aesthetic point of view. But we will find out later, too, that as we get older, we need to really watch our body composition, increase our lean mass, decrease our fat mass, because this will help us move better, be more energetic, and also decrease the risk of disease. On the other side is skill-related fitness. This is normally associated with athletics. However, this also has to do with activities of daily living as well. It's a big part of mainstream fitness program. That's agility, which is the ability to change direction under control. Balance, that can mean balance around the joint or just ability to stabilize in a certain position and maintain balance in one position. Coordination, that's the coordination of all the systems of the body for coordinated movements and efficiency of movements. Then there's the power output. A lot of people think that power is just like explosive movements, but all power is our rate of force development. How much can we make our muscles fire, how fast we can make them, how hard we can make our muscles contract to cause movement. And that helps us, and all power really is work over time, or the amount of work that we can perform in a certain amount of time. We can have high power outputs, we can have low power outputs. Sprinting is a high power output. Walking is considered a low power output. Now we also have cyclic and acyclic. Cyclic means a repetitive motion over and over again, like walking or running or riding a bike. Acyclic, which means doing something once, taking a break, doing it again, taking a break. Like if we're moving boxes. We pick up a box, load it into something, come back, grab another box, do that. We do it once, take a little break, do it again, take a break. Kind of like weightlifting too. We'll perform a couple of repetitions, take a break, couple of repetitions, take a break. That could be considered acyclic. Then we need speed. We still need a certain amount of speed, even in normal activities of daily living, and our reactive ability. We also used to be called reaction time. We can actually increase this by training properly. We can get our nervous system to fire more effectively, get the muscles to contract faster, because we might need this in real life. If we're walking across the street and all of a sudden somebody pulls around a corner and they're headed for us, we need to be able to get out of the way fast enough or do some kind of activity with speed and be able to react properly and fast. Now, hypokinetic disease are conditions that occur from a sedentary lifestyle. And some of these may include obesity, problems arising from not doing anything, having a sedentary behavior, cardiovascular disease, many forms of cancer, back problems. So if you're not sedentary and you're in the wrong position sitting on a couch all day or sitting in a chair all day, this could cause some back problems because some of our muscles they lengthen and some get shorter. It can also cause type 2 diabetes. This is now considered a disease of affluence and also considered an autoimmune disease, because look at some of the food that we eat. You know, we eat a lot of processed food, a lot of fast foods, we're not moving around, so what happens? Our whole system changes and our body kind of almost thinks like this is poison. If we eat too much of this, it could cause some problems. Osteoporosis. If we don't load the bones in a certain way, all those bone cells, it goes from like having a real dense mesh system to a real light mesh system, and all of a sudden the bones will crumble. They need to be loaded in a certain way. They need to have a certain amount of stress on them to make the bones grow and get thicker. And that's why they tell a lot of elderly people they need to get up and move, have ground-based, multi-joint, multi-planar movements that's loaded, that loads the bones efficiently to cause them to grow and stabilize and become strong. And all this too, that diseases can cause a substantial amount of mental health, because mental health can really affect our overall health and well-being. Now, physiological fitness, this is most ignored by the fitness community. It includes non-performance components leading to all our biological systems that are influenced by habitual activity. So if you don't use it, you lose it. Our metabolic fitness, it's the status of all the metabolic systems and variables that may predict risk for diabetes and cardiovascular disease. In other words, we have to get these systems to be used most efficiently so they work well, so it can decrease our risk of disease. Morphological fitness is the status of our body composition factor, body circumference, body fat content, regional fat distribution. We'll get to that in a little bit. Now, bone integrity, bone is considered a connective tissue. We have bones, ligaments, tendons, muscles, and fascia. Those are connective tissue. So the only way to get, like I said before, the only way to get bone stronger is to load it properly. So because if you stress it, it's just like a muscle. If you stress the muscle just the right way, what happens to it? It gets bigger and stronger. Bone is the same exact way. So we have to look at the status of bone mineral density. Now, last statement here, the health-related fitness, skill-related fitness, and physiological fitness. What do all these relate to? This relates to performance. Remember, life is one big performance, so we need to be strong enough and healthy enough to withstand the rigors of everyday life. And that goes right back to this integration in our performance training pyramid. So if we eat right, are physically active, take care of all those aspects of fitness by exercising and becoming physically active and eating right, we can build that our foundation of strength in our entire human body. That's general physical preparation. We can prepare ourselves to go to the next level to become even stronger, and then we can optimize our preparedness so we can handle the rigors of life. And how do we increase fitness to improve performance? Well, we need to look at the factors or stressors that affect sports or fitness performance, or even life performance. Now, this was taken from Dr. Michael Stone's book, Practice and Principles of Resistance Training. But it has a lot to do with everyday life, because sports-related fitness is a combination of health-related and skill-related fitness, as well as physiological fitness. So let's look at this. What affects performance? Well, let's start with work. If we're working too much, it can affect our day-to-day performances in everyday life. We get stressed out. We're working a lot. We go home. We eat the wrong foods, which is nutrition over here. We're tired. We don't want to exercise. It can affect our sleep as well. And how about school? The same thing. Causes a lot of stress. Takes up a lot of our time, and we're so focused on school, we don't get out and do anything. Our social life could affect our performance as well. Partying too much. Any kind of social life that could affect our well-being. Doesn't matter what type of social life it is. If it starts to affect our day-to-day performances, something's wrong. Any kind of injury can affect our performance as well too, because if we're hurt, we don't want to do a lot of different things. We don't want to go to work. We don't want to go to school. We may start eating wrong, all that. We talked about sleep. We need optimal amounts of sleep to make sure that we perform day to day in the best way possible. The right nutrition. Nutrition is now considered medicine, but it's been that way for a long time. If we eat the right foods, it goes in our bodies and gives the proper nutrition to all of our systems, and guess what? Our systems perform optimally so we can decrease the risk of disease. Any kind of restoration, nutrition and sleep and training are actually considered forms of restoration, or just resting is a form of restoration. Massage therapy, foam rolling, you name it. There are so many different types of restoration that help us increase our performance. The specific environment we live in as well. We have a hostile work environment, we have a hostile home life, that could affect it. If we have an environment that's full of poison, that could affect this too. So take a good look at your environment you live in. If it's really stressful, what can you do to change it, to optimize it so we can increase our performance? And for sports and stuff, we have a coach-athlete interaction. But this can also affect us in fitness. It could also affect us in our social life too. If you have bad personal interactions with people, maybe you need to review that as well to say, is this person really necessary or needed in my life? Or maybe it's you. Maybe you don't feel good about yourself and you take it out on other people too. So it's a two-way street. Then lastly, we have the heredity. Sometimes people are just ticking time bombs. So once again, we need to look at our heredity of ourselves to see what could affect our day-to-day performances, and what could we do to offset that or decrease it, decrease the risk of any kind of disease. Now, sports-related fitness and life-related fitness, it's a combination of all those things we just talked about. Health-related, skill-related, and physiological-related fitnesses. So once again, it's like the business plan. What's our priority? What's our goal? If you look at sports, once they get done with the season, they take a break after the postseason and review. What do I need to do for next season? So they make a plan. They have the off season. They get rid of any deficits. Then they start preparing for the in season, for preseason. They're trying to reach a peak. And during the in season, they're trying to maintain that peak. And they'll vary the volume intensity of training or whatever they need to do to either maintain that peak or that certain level of performance or even increase it a little bit. Well, life is the same way. We need to look at our entire life, whether it's work, health, family, everything. Occupation, personal activity, exercise protocol, aesthetics. What is your goal? What can you do to plan to increase or make the performance better in every one of your relationships, whether it's a personal, it's a work, it's even your relationship with physical activity. That's a relationship, because if you don't really like it, you're not going to pay a lot of attention to it. Next, you got to test. If you really want to start improving all these things too, you got to test. Where are you at right now? You need to examine all the current levels of all the activity, all the other categories that you need to use. And when you evaluate all these categories and find out where are you at, what am I good in, what am I bad in, it gives you a starting point. Now, this is the basis of almost every program. But what binds these together? Believe it or not, strength. And this is a pyramid model comprising the major elements of fitness. Look at all the categories of strength. We have skill strength, we have maximum and static strength, dynamic strength. We have all kinds of categories of speed endurance, speed strength, flexibility, speed. We have flexibility as a category of strength. We have endurance. That's a category of strength as well too. Strength is the foundation of everything we do. It is a universal requirement. This has been proven time and time again over the last 50 years from real science. People that have actually studied this from performances not only in the athletic field, but in real life situations too. Think about this. We're going to use this as an example. If you want a lot of buying power, what do you need to do? You need to strengthen your bank account. If you want to be a great teacher and have this power to teach effectively, what do you need? It's the strength of your education that's going to help you too. The strength of the knowledge that you possess or hold. So you can see where we're going with this. If you want to improve your fitness levels, you have to look at all the categories of fitness and how do I strengthen each category to make sure I optimize my health for maximum effectiveness. Now, strength is a very misunderstood concept. So we're going to look at what is the definition of strength. What are the types of strength? If we look over here at Stone, and Sand's star diagram, we can see the different categories as they're related to everything. So you can see how strength is related to every one of those other aspects. And in the middle is our core strength, because if we look at the human body, if our trunk is very, very strong, what we call our core, and the arms and legs move really efficiently and effectively. So if we have our core strength in many, many different things, many different categories of strength, our overall fitness levels, our overall health will improve dramatically. So that leads us back to the methodology of training to increase all these categories. We need to look and see where are we deficient at? What category of strength are we deficient at? And as we said too, general fitness should be balanced in all the categories, at least theoretically. Now note, research does indicate that more than any other factor, strength does prevent injuries. If we're trying to do something really, really fast or really explosively, if the connective tissue around all the joints is weak, the muscle may be strong, but the connective tissue is weak because of improper training protocols, then what's going to happen? That connective tissue is going to break down and it's going to cause injury. So you can look at that. Strength in every category is going to help us do activities of daily living even better. You don't have to specialize in strength, not like regular sports, because if you look at sports or some kind of activity, it has a specialized type of strength. But they still need to maintain those other categories as well too to ensure that they stay healthy and injury free. So we must evaluate all the categories of strength to determine all of our deficits. Now, what is strength? The old definition is it's the ability to exert maximum force. A more inclusive definition that was developed almost 30 years ago by Kramer and Knudsen, it's the ability to exert force at a specified velocity in a specified direction. So that will cover all those categories of strength and from that star diagram. And remember too, activities of daily living require strength as much as sports performance, because activities of daily living, everyday life, is considered a performance. And what are the types of strength? What are the types of strength training? For optimal health and fitness, every category we have up there. We need to go heavy, moderate, and light resistance or loads, high, medium, and low volumes, fast, slow, and medium speeds. Look at all the various modalities. Body weight training, barbells, dumbbells, cables, any types of machines. A lot of people don't believe machines are that great, but they can be a useful tool. Flipping tires, kettlebells, suspension systems, medicine balls. All you have to do is grab some magazines or training magazines or catalogs from certain companies. Look at all the tools available to you. So my suggestion is, and what I tell all my students and all my athletes, build 2 toolboxes. One toolbox full of information and how to use it, how to use all this information correctly, all the science and the applied science, and the other toolbox full of tools. The right tool for the right person at the right time for the right job. Now this list is endless. It just has to be planned and implemented correctly. And don't forget skill strength and strength skill for all activities of daily living. You can just be strong, but you still, even in real life, you know, some of our activities need to have a certain type of skill to be able to do it correctly. So if you learn how to do it correctly, even just picking your kids up off the floor, picking up boxes and moving things around the house and all that kind of stuff, doing yard work. If you do it in the best possible position, the optimal position, you can decrease the risk of injury and increase the effectiveness of what you're trying to do. Now, aspects of muscular fitness for health. It preserves bone mass. It improves glucose tolerance and insulin sensitivity. It reduces your heart rate, once again, a stronger heart, and reduces your blood pressure response during submaximal lifting. It decreases risk of musculoskeletal injury. Once again, that's that strength, what we just talked about. Improves the ability for activities of daily living with aging. That's why they tell people, you know, a lot of people used to believe once I get older I can slow down. You shouldn't slow down. You can speed up. Get off the couch and go do something. Stay strong. All categories of strength. So you can become much more efficient at your day-to-day activities and live a longer, healthier life. You get better balance and decreased risk of falls when you're stronger. An example is that look at babies when they first start walking. What do? Their feet are far apart. They're wobbling all over the place. But once they get stronger, their nervous system starts to develop. Their muscles start to develop in the connective tissue network. Their feet go from wide to a narrow base of support, and they can move most efficiently. But what happens as we get older? What do old people do? Their feet spread out so they get a wider base of support because they're unbalanced, because this balance strength, their strength balance, decreases rapidly along with their regular muscular strength, and then they start using canes and all that. So if we can do that, stay strong to continue with normal, very efficient, normal human movement, we can decrease these risk of falls as we get older. And also, as we stay healthy throughout our lifetime, it can improve our self-esteem. Now, for fitness and performance, for any kind of performance, enhanced muscular strength and endurance will improve our performance. Enhanced speed, power, and agility and balance, once again, will increase performance as well. So that it will also help reduce the risk of injury, improve our body composition, improve our confidence in all kinds of activities, and enhance our performance in most activities. That's what we're talking about. All these categories of strength from this star diagram. If we can increase or get good at every one of these, it'll enhance our performance in everything. Now, exercise intensity, intensity could be all kinds of things. What the load is of what we're doing, how fast we're doing something, the volume or amount of effort we're doing, the load, what types of strength we're using, the effort, load, and work. How much work are we doing? You know, and we're describing the rate of work. How much energy is being expended per minute? So if you're going slow, you're not exactly producing a lot of force, and you're going slow, so that's a low power output. But if we start getting our muscles to contract really fast to produce a lot of force, we go faster, we're going to do a lot more work in a shorter amount of time. Then, if we do the same thing over a long period of time, that's sustained force output, and we can have an extended power output. That's what we're talking about here, power output. It's the rate of doing work. And power is nothing more than how much work we do in a specific amount of time. And all work is how much force we apply to something times the distance we move that object. It could be just doing a bicep curl or raising our arm up or moving our entire body from one point to the other. Power can be low or sustained force output for a long period of time or a high force performed in a short period of time. And we've given these examples before. Cycling or running, that's cyclic work, low force or even high force over a long period of time. Now, weightlifting, if you look at a 1 rep maximum, that's high force trying to go as quickly as possible. So resistance training, we have all kinds of different work outputs and power outputs. We have fast movements, we have slow movements, we have high and low volume plans, and there's so many different types of movements, it's not funny. Now, the intensity of resistance training according to the ACSM standards. Here's the objective. If you want strength, they consider high intensity strength training to be less than 8 reps. For moderate intensity, it's 8 to 15, and anything for strength endurance is more than 15 reps, and that's a lower intensity. So that's what most of the program is designed on, depending on what the goals are and what level are you at. This is why we do a lot of testing to see where's the person been, look at their background, if they've ever done anything like this before. So we need to start getting them to, once again, like the bottom of the pyramid, general physical preparation. Teach them how to do these exercises correctly at a low weight, maybe for higher repetitions, building up, and then increases their strength, builds their foundation. Then we can start doing more moderately intense work and even higher intensity work. But this takes time. So we're going to stop it right here. This is the end of our first part. The second part 2, is going to be the basic strength testing. So we'll see you in a few minutes.